This is Dr. Z, Zachary Brooks, and I'm here with my friend Goodyear, and this is my podcast about bilingual decision making. Today I'm going to talk about a subject I chose for my dissertation. A dissertation is like doing homework for 2 years. It sounds like a bad decision. In some cases it is, because it certainly drives you crazy when you're doing this homework for 2 years. But in the end, I ended up with something I find super fascinating called bilingual decision making. So I'm recording this podcast from your favorite local library. It's an awesome place. Check it out sometime. So today I'm going to start geeking out about bilingual decision making and invite you to come with me and share your own thoughts about a topic I find fascinating, but even better, a topic that everyone can and does have an opinion on. The reason why is because almost all of us interact with people who come from different language and cultural backgrounds. And since we live in an interconnected world, we might as well do it very well. So once again, this is Dr. Z. Zachary Brooks with my friend Goodyear, talking about bilingual decision making. Hello again, this is Dr. Z. Zachary Brooks with my friend Goodyear. So what is bilingual decision making? In the first episode, we defined it as the study of how decisions can change as a function of language competence. In other words, if you're an American living abroad and speaking the local language, would you make a different decision than someone who speaks that language as a first language? In the first episode, we also gave an overview of decision-making research that can be normative, descriptive, or prescriptive. In other words, we can study decision-making as if it were perfect, we can accept it as imperfect, or we can try to improve our mistakes. We also looked at the world of applied linguistics and second language acquisition. You know, while you are suffering with sounds and grammar and all the other things that go along with learning a new language, people who study language, they're gleefully studying you and all of your suffering. That doesn't sound very nice, but it's all for science. Finally, in the first episode, we looked at how words such as rare and probable can be used differently by first and second language speakers. In short, second language speakers give higher numbers more than first language speakers for the same word, such as rare. If it's rare for Sandra to go jogging, how many days per month does Sandra go jogging? And what we found out is second language speakers give higher numbers. Well, the more important question is, why would that be? One of the reasons has to do with how people perceive risk in an environment where they have to use their new language. They want to give themselves more chances to be correct. So using 7% instead of 5% provides more room for error. Another way of thinking about this is that second language speakers want to give themselves fewer chances to be incorrect. So we're back. Topic 2 today is talking about ethical decision makings. This is Dr. Z. Zachary Brooks with my good friend Goodyear. So now that we've reviewed the first episode, in case you missed it, let's talk about how people who speak multiple languages may change their decisions when confronted with an ethical problem. You may have heard of this next problem. There's a runaway train, and it can't stop. And if it doesn't stop, it will kill 5 people who happen to be on a train track, trapped on a train track. Why are they there, you ask? Great question, but we'll get to that later. The train will kill 5 people, but in this scenario, usually it's administered with paper and pencil or computer. You have this picture of a runaway train, and there's a bystander, and you are, as a subject, as a participant in this study, asked to see yourself as this person who's just standing there watching this horrible incident unfold. You have the power to change the destiny of the 5 people who will die if the train continues on its course. All you have to do is pull a switch, and then the train will not continue on the same track, it will go to a different track. But there's a problem. If you move the switch to a new track, there's one person who is also trapped. The choice now is, do you move the switch and save 5 people's lives? If you do that, you will kill one person. If you don't touch the switch at all, you won't kill anyone. So while you ponder that thought, let's consider a new one. Do you think your decision would change if you were using your first or your second language? A group of scientists in Spain thought, why not test this question? Led by a guy named Albert Costa, the group of researchers in Spain asked participants to play the train game, it's called the trolley problem, in 2 languages. Can you guess which group was more likely to pull the switch and save 5 lives? In the experiment with Costa and his colleagues from 2014, they found that second language speakers were more likely to pull the switch to save lives. This also means they had fewer problems with one person dying as a result of pulling the switch. At least it means that in the confines of this experiment. The explanation for this result is that when you're using your first language, you're more emotional, and when you use your second language, you're less emotional. If you're less emotional, when you're using your second language, you're more detached and you're more able to make hard decisions. At least that's one thought you can take when you say that when using your second language, you're less emotional. Does that make sense to you? We're back. This is Dr. Z, Zachary Brooks, with my good friend Goodyear. So topic 3, emotions and your second language. So in the previous segment, we learned how cold yet effective people can be when they use their second language. They seem to be less in touch with their emotions, so they can make hard decisions that those of us using our first language cannot. Does that seem right to you? Do we suddenly lose our emotions when we speak a second language? Are we so limited in our vocabulary when using our second language that we have to make do with less? Do we really have a hard time expressing our emotions that severely when using our second language? Well, maybe, but not so fast. It may depend. Depend on what? It may depend on individual words. It turns out that with the word pool we swim around daily, there are certain words that can affect our decisions. In another study with a trolley problem, that's the runaway train that will kill 5 people unless you move the switch to save one person, kill one person but save the 5. In another study in which I conducted, I found a twist. I actually found that first language speakers were more likely to pull the switch. So what's going on here? We just said that second language speakers were less emotional because they don't have the same emotional connection when using their second language. But I found kind of a different result. So I found that first language speakers were more likely to pull the switch. When I came across this, it really bothered me. After all, I used Costa's materials. How could there be such a different result? I mean, it happens in science, people get different results. But it still made no sense to me. Then I found the one-word difference between Costa's study and my own. Costa asked participants, what would you do? And I asked participants, what should you do? The difference between first language speakers and second language speakers with the words would and should was huge, because I had incorrectly copied the materials. And by the way, some of the best discoveries ever made are from mistakes, and I made a mistake. Because I had incorrectly copied the materials, and I inadvertently switched the word would to should, I also discovered how changing to should made a huge difference, especially for first language speakers. Suddenly, first language speakers were more likely to pull the switch when presented the word should. Did first language speakers suddenly become less emotional? Well, maybe. or maybe they suddenly felt compelled to pull the switch. As you know, the word should suggests an obligation to do something. And for first language speakers like me, reading should may feel like there's little choice but to pull the switch. So now that we have two explanations for ethical decision making for first and second language speakers, are they in conflict? Well, not necessarily. Emotions, or the lack of emotions, can play a part in why second language speakers are more likely to pull the switch, but so too can words that are connected to a sense of obligation for first language speakers. So let's make one thing clear. The results express a tendency for people to change. Some people in these experiments using their first or second language, they don't change their decision. They either will pull the switch all the time, or they will not pull the switch. We're talking about people who do change their opinion. And what we see is that in a population of people using their first or second language, there are tendencies to have a change in the statistics for that group of people. Once again, this is Dr. Z, Zachary Brooks, with my friend Goodyear, coming from your favorite local library. So thanks again for subscribing and tuning into the second podcast on bilingual decision making. Once again, I really hope you appreciate how speaking another language can help you see the world in a whole new way, and sometimes make decisions that might change from your first language. Or you might interact with someone who is using their second language. You can appreciate how suddenly this whole new code called language influences a mind to make a decision. Maybe it's a better decision, maybe it's a worse decision. Anyway, subscribe next time to find out how we will look at how relatively simple math problems reveal differences between first and second language speakers and how people make decisions differently. In the meantime, happy deciding.